Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's HackerKast. I'm Jeremiah Grossman, founder of Whitehat Security, and I'm with Robert Hansen out in Austin, also affectionately known as Arsenic. And we also have Matt Johansen out of Austin. I don't think Matt has a handle, but he...
Austin? When did I move to Austin?
Yeah. You're from Houston, that's right. Do you have a handle? You ever had a handle, Matt?
Matt J.
Matt, that's your Twitter handle. You need a hacker handle. We have to make one up for you.
I had one way back when. I don't use it anymore. So Matt J works.
All right, so let's get to the AppSec news stories of the week. You know, originally thought it was going to be a slow news week, but it ended up there's a lot going on in AppSec land. You just got to pay attention sometimes. So let's see what we get to. So Robert, we saw this come up yesterday or the day before, crashing Chrome tabs with Unicode. So what's the issue here?
Yeah, this has been out for a week or so, but it just kind of came to my attention a couple days ago. Basically, there's this very small Unicode string that if you don't have the right library installed, it immediately causes your Chrome tab to crash on Macintosh or Macs, Mac OS X. And so I made a point of putting it on Facebook and Twitter to see what happened. And as you might guess, I got quite a few irate people messaging me saying about lost productivity, which I think is always a bit hilarious when people talk about productivity when they're talking about Twitter and Facebook. But
actually, it's funny. I'm impressed that they actually knew it was your post. Like, as it was crashing my feed, and I couldn't get to the feed to go like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, you weren't the only one.
As hackers do.
But I mean, it was a good point. Like, I was trying to do it sort of tongue in cheek. Like, first of all, that this is broken. But secondly, if you're really relying on Facebook and Twitter to do your job, you know, there's no other way to do your job, that's kind of a problem. You know?
It's pretty funny. Really, I mean, you could have tested it locally on your browser, but you think, yeah, let's test it out on Facebook and Twitter.
Well, you know.
what are you gonna do? Yeah. All right, let's try a different story here. Here's a really interesting headline. MRIs show brains shut down with security prompts. So this also falls in Robert's strike zone, and I think we can all relate.
Yeah, there's this really interesting research that basically shows that there's like these two places in your brain that just turn off as soon as you see a security prompt or multiple security prompts that are similar. I guess your brain sort of goes through a bit of training. Like the first time it sees it, it's unique or whatever. Then it's interested in it and it won't shut off. But the more times it sees a prompt, like an SSL prompt or whatever, the more likely it is that they'll click through as rapidly as possible. Which I think we all sort of intuitively knew, but it's neat to actually see the brain science behind it. And so the recommendation was to have sort of this unique thing pop up and make it look different every single time, which of course it has all sorts of other usability problems if no one knows what a real security prompt looks like. So not an easy problem to solve, and I think really what's going to end up happening is we're going to have to go down the path of just default do the correct behavior and stop alerting people or even letting them fail. You know?
Yeah, this is we saw this at AppSec USA, not AppSec Cali rather. On the SSL warnings and how to make them more effective and help users make the right choice. And Alex Stamos said just hard fail the connections and let the internet fix itself. And the browser guys didn't want to do that because they figured that the users would switch browsers. So we get into that market share conundrum again.
Market share versus consumer safety. I mean, that's the problem, right? That's why you can't trust browser manufacturers to do what's in the best interest of users.
That was a really interesting conversation to be in with Alex, on the CISO side of Yahoo, just saying, hey, it's going to be a painful 8 days, but let's do it, And then the Chrome guys were like, no, we can't for this, that, and the other reason, and he was just basically calling them out. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I guess now we could say that your warnings are making people brain dead.
Awesome. There you go. There's your tagline.
So let's jump to top 10 web hacking techniques of 2014. This has been consuming Matt's life probably for the last, 3 months?
It's done!
So for those who don't know, what is this project and where can we read more?
So for those who don't know, we do this every year since 2006, Jer.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so this is we've been doing it for a while, and what we do is we put it out to the community and say, hey, give us and source in any new web hacking technique or like major new web like thing, vulnerability that's being used, technique and we'll conglomerate a giant list, and then we put that list out to the community and say, okay, now vote on your favorite 15 of these. So we usually get anywhere between like 40 and 80 new submissions in a given year. I think we got 46 this year. And so we voted, the community votes, we get a few hundred votes, and that narrows it down to 15. And we take that 15 and bring it to a panel of experts to pick and order the top 10. These experts are like, heads of security for major companies that, we know through the community, and they say, okay, yeah, this is worse than this, and they help actually eliminate 5 and order the whole thing. So we're finally done. I can stop begging for votes, and it's the hardest presentation that Jared can attest that we give any year, because now I have to give the presentation. Well, I already gave the webinar, but you have to learn the presentation. It's like becoming a pseudo expert in some other expert's area of expertise, and be able to like knowledgeably talk about it. And each one of these 10 things could be their own black hat talk, and most of them are for their own hour, right? And I get like 5 to 6 minutes to go through and power through the top, couple of these. So yeah, it's done. This year's winner was Heartbleed. So Heartbleed Heartbleed took number 1. Shell Shock was number 2. Poodle was number 3.
All back to the infrastructure layer, SSL crypto bugs again.
Yep, and then 4 and 5 were 2 of my favorite. It was the Misfortune Cookie, that residential gateway. We talked about it on HackerKast a long time ago.
Yep.
Super, super cool research. These guys were super creative, just soldered their way into these routers to build their own debug menus, and just unbelievable research. Yeah, I mean, it was great stuff.
Was there anything on the list that you didn't expect to be on the list or do as well as it did?
So there was like a Google two-factor auth bypass that made the top 5 that I thought was kind of interesting, because it was not really attributed to one researcher in particular, but the experts kind of were talking about how, okay, this is just, we've seen such an uprise in this that it is kind of a new technique, with taking over kind of the cell phone provider side of things and getting two-factor auth tokens. I didn't think that was going to make it as high as it did. There was a DDoS technique that someone showed that it's possible to host a DDoS via Facebook Notes. Whoa. Like you can have a note on Facebook, and there was a way to do some sort of get flood via the Notes app of Facebook, so your DDoS attack was coming from Facebook. That was super interesting, and made the top 10. I thought that was interesting, but I didn't know it was going to be up there, and it did. And yeah, I mean, there was some really esoteric stuff that people seemed to be really passionate about, like some covert timing channel stuff, some Belkin router research that people got a lot of votes. But yeah.
So it's a great way to for people to keep up to speed on the latest and greatest AppSec research, the bleeding edge stuff. And kudos to all the researchers that do all this work. I mean, it's our jobs to put it all together, but they put out the research. They really do the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a camera moving out.
Yeah. When I was sitting in your office filming, they were doing that to me. I was like, "Oh, don't tap on glass. Don't feed."
All right. So the links to see the webcast and the webinar that Matt did are going to be in the notes. So definitely keep up on that one.
Yeah, and I'll put the slides up so that they're publicly available too.
Right on. So more about browsers. So CanSec West just took place, a conference, and they had a contest called PWN2OWN, which is basically a zero-day hacking contest. So they set up a whole bunch of computers with browsers on them, and then they'll run the browsers into your exploit that's hosted on a website that you control. And if you can, compromise the machine just upon viewing the web page, you score money. So I'm a big fan of bounties and contests like this. So it's always very interesting to see the results, to see, how much money, how long it takes, what ODes come out. And so here's the headline from ThreatPost. all major browsers fall at pwn2own day 2. That includes Chrome, Firefox, and Internet Explorer. So this was expected to happen. Most of the time this happens. I mean, O-days are out there. Software has vulnerabilities. But the one I thought was cool is just the plain dollars and cents one. So a Korean researcher by the name of Jung Hoon Lee, hopefully I got the pronunciation at least somewhat right. I think he scored a total of $225,000 on that day for his exploits. That's just crazy. It's actually exciting in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much time he put into it, right? What's the time to dollar ratio there for him?
Well, I mean, let's say he spent all year.
I know, it's still an amazing amount.
That's a pretty good living. If he spent 6 months, now he's making $500,000 a year. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it totally is. I just am curious of data's point of view. Okay, like if you have the skill set, how much time is it worth to put into it for the chance of winning that much money?
Now, the one I'm kind of pressing the guys over there to do it at pwn2own is I would really want to see a pwn2own based upon AV software. That's what I want to see, when you can compromise a computer based upon the security software. So that one's going to be a little tricky. There's not going to be a lot of people happy about that one, but I think that's coming.
Yeah, it's bound to happen.
All right, so that's pwn2own. We got two more. This one was kind of cool. Matt was looking at this one. Okay, you gotta look at this headline here. Wind turbine blown away by control system vulnerability. Got to be from the register. So, but it's the details in this one that were pretty cool.
Yeah, so this one's ridiculous. This is talking about real-life consequences of a web vulnerability. Here you go, all right? So this vulnerability was put out. It got its own CVE. It's categorized as CSRF, but it's a little bit different than traditional CSRF. But at the core, it is cross-site request forgery. So what the researchers were able to do was, of course, this wind turbine accepts GET and POST requests. Why wouldn't the wind turbine be HTTP enabled, right? What could go wrong? Hold my beer. Yeah, so via a GET request, they were able to change the admin credentials of the admin panel of this wind turbine. Just one GET request, send it, it changes the admin credentials, you log in, you can, let's read the quote here real quick. This exploit can cause a loss of power for all attached systems. You completely control the wind turbine. The manufacturer of these turbines is X series, but I'm calling it Xerxes because that's what it
Okay, so here's the one, and this just really annoyed me to no end. At the end of the story here, it says, as always, users of the wind turbine are advised to keep the kit behind firewalls and only allow remote access over VPN. I think that says, yeah, we know our stuff's broken. Put a firewall on it.
Guess what's always open? Guess what's always open?
Yeah, and in this particular case, that actually might slightly help it because you do only get username and password out of it. So without some way to use that username and password, you'd still be semi-limited, which I bet is also vulnerable to cross-site request forgery and on and on. So it semi-helps kind of, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Firewalls do not solve that problem at all.
The admin panel is just a web interface also.
Yeah, that's why I said it doesn't really help it. Doesn't really help it, but it does help that. If that were the only exploit you have, that would actually not work. But I guarantee you it's vulnerable to other stuff once you have the username and password.
This is why we can't have nice things, because we keep saying, put a firewall on it, and like it's going to solve anything. I mean, just look. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I mean, there's breaches every single day, major breaches, and every single one of the breach victims has firewalls. They're not working. We actually need software security. Okay, I'll get off the soapbox now, but it had to be said. It had to be said. So, and one of those things we all know. This is the last story we'll cover. That we all know is a problem, but we really don't have a great alternative. So this is on the SSL system, or SSL TLS system. So the headline here reads, Google warns of unauthorized TLS certificates trusted by almost all OSes. So Robert, you have to tell us what's exactly going on here.
Yeah, so this is actually fairly complicated, but basically, there's a whole bunch of certificate authorities all over the place that your browser naturally trusts. One of them is this Chinese certificate authority, CNNIC. And they delegate, these certificate authorities delegate the provisioning of certificates to, let's call them delegates. And one of them was this Egyptian company called MCS Holdings. So what they did is they started issuing their own certificates for like Google's properties and putting them in a man-in-the-middle proxy so they could decrypt traffic going, bound to, wherever we're talking about, in this case Google, from wherever they had these proxies set up as a man-in-the-middle. So this is one of the ways the Egyptian government might be trying to figure out what people are saying and doing as they're using Google. And this won't work on Firefox or Google because they have certificate pinning. So for now, at least, they're okay. But if you're using Internet Explorer or really anything other than that, like any sort of like APIs or whatever, there's a very good chance that those are going to be vulnerable. So basically, until the revocation occurs across all of those different operating systems, it's strongly advised to be careful what you say over Google if you happen to be in Egypt.
Yeah, so it just shows. I mean, what does the average browser trust? Something like 200 plus certificate authorities and an unknown number of intermediate authorities, I guess you might call it.
Yeah, I think the best quote I've heard on this is, "I'm not afraid of the man who wants to attack all of them. I'm only afraid of them. I'm terrified of the guy who wants only one, because that's all it takes. You only need one to start issuing certificates." And so a similar thing happened with Microsoft with their live server in, I think it's Italy or something. We'll put a link to all this stuff in the show notes, but effectively, this is not a problem that you can really solve, because you have to somehow get better controls around what can be issued on your behalf, and the only way to do that is like better authentication. And I think this is kind of what EV certs were supposed to solve. EV certs were supposed to be impossible to forge or create or whatever, but of course we know if the certificate authority goes rogue, that's the problem. So when I did that write-up about Hillary Clinton, and I try to map out all of the different things that could have owned Hillary Clinton, that is exactly the kind of thing. If you don't control all of those things, you're going to get nailed.
So this is the problem that Moxie Marlinspike was talking about years ago on trust agility, that at some point a CA is going to go rogue, and while I might trust him today, I may or may not trust them tomorrow. But the CA system doesn't allow for that flexibility, so we're needing a different model. Unfortunately, that model really doesn't exist. There's, no one's found out a good business model to replace the CA system as it exists today. So this is kind of where we are.
And I don't think it's going to change anytime in the near future. I really think certificate pinning is only a short-term and very hokey stopgap to a much larger problem. If everyone in the world uses certificate pinning, you're right back to where you started. You have a very small handful of people with complete control over this, master list of where everyone's stuff are, and you have to prove to them who you are, and that's a big nightmare. It's a pain in the butt, and I don't think it's scalable at all.
So it's really interesting how these two stories relate. We have this story, which you're talking about now, and then it relates to the earlier warning, where the earlier story where MRIs, security warnings, make you brain dead. It's the same story. So maybe the reason we can't figure out a replacement is because we're all brain dead from looking at the SSL warnings. So that's HackerKast. So there's a lot of work going on, and if you have innovative ideas on how to replace the CA system, the world could use your help. All right, thanks guys, and thanks everybody for watching. Please rate, please subscribe, we could use it. And if you have stories you want us to cover, angles and things you want us to talk about, let us know.
Take it easy, guys.